just like to thank everybody for coming here today. I'm Captain Richard Mazzone with the New York State Police. I'm going to give you a narrative description of the events that occurred yesterday, and I'll take a few questions. I'm accompanied today by Brendan Casey, who's the Commissioner of the Orange County Office of Emergency Management, Gary Tuthill with the New York State Office of Emergency Management, as well as the Chief of the City of Newburgh Fire Department. Yesterday on March 7th at approximately 3:11 p.m., a CSX freight train consisting of 3 locomotives and 77 freight cars was traveling southbound through the city of Newburgh on the CSX River Line. At or about that time, as that train was approaching a private crossway at Steel Stiles, a 135-foot articulating boom lift was crossing the tracks. For unknown reasons, that boom lift became disabled on the tracks. The operator of the boom lift departed that vehicle, sensing or obviously observing the impending impact. The lead freight train subsequently struck that boom lift, drugged that boom lift several hundred yards, or pushed it several hundred yards south, which ultimately destroyed the boom lift and caused the freight train to derail. The lead freight train derailed, and it subsequently came to rest here on River Road. Following that derailment, 2 other locomotives and 16 other freight cars and tankers derailed behind it. During that derailment, the freight cars and the tankers, they struck 2 pieces of CSX maintenance equipment that were on an adjacent track. It was what's known as a tamper and a regulator, and there were those 2 pieces of maintenance equipment were operated by 2 CSX employees. Those CSX employees were treated at St. Luke's Hospital. One was admitted with a fractured nose. The other had a minor head laceration. The actual train, the freight trains, the locomotives were occupied by 2 CSX employees, a conductor and an engineer. They were treated and released at St. Luke's Hospital with minor injuries. Following the impact and the derailment, we came down here with law enforcement, fire, emergency responders, assess the situation. As I stated, with the derailment, it consisted of 3 of the locomotives, or the 3 main power units, the locomotives, and then the cars that derailed were a combination. It was 16 freight cars and tankers. 6 of them were actual tankers. We ultimately determined that none of the tankers were compromised. They were not leaking any hazardous material. The only hazardous substances that were leaked were approximately 2,000 gallons of diesel fuel that leaked out of the ruptured tanks on the freight cars that derailed. Those leaks are being addressed by Miller Environmental. At this point, the investigation is a joint investigation as far as the accident investigation between the New York State Police, also the CSX Police, and the Federal Railroad Administration. The investigation is pending. We're asking anyone or any witnesses with any information to contact the New York State Police at 845-344-5300. To date, since yesterday, the description of events of witnesses and even the operator of the boom lift is consistent with what I just advised you. With that being said, I'll take any questions that you have.
Can you give us the names of the victims, of the people who were taken to the hospital?
Not at this time. I'll try to release that later in the day after discussing that with CSX management.
And can you talk to us a little bit more about their injuries that you were going through a little fast?
Minor injuries on the occupants, or the conductor and the engineer of the train. And with regard to the 2 CSX employees that were on the maintenance equipment, one of them had a fractured nose. That was the most extensive injury, and the other had a head laceration.
And was that one hospitalized?
The employee with the fractured nose was hospitalized, yes.
And you said 16 cars, because just a little while ago there was a press release that said 14.
Exactly. That has changed. It is 16 cars. Of that 16 cars, 5 of them were actual tankers, and as I indicated, it was 3 power units or locomotives.
Talk to us about this boom lift. Is it common for this boom lift to be operating so close to the tracks, and who owns that piece of equipment?
Well, the boom lift was being operated by employees of Steel Style that obviously have access at that crossing. It was a rental boom lift, and as far as any other details with regard to the operation, I don't have them at this time. Again, the investigation is pending. I'd say it's not common to operate a boom lift at a railroad crossing, but things like this they do occur at times.
Do we know what they were doing?
I believe they're cleaning pipes or they're performing some type of maintenance down here in the area. It was unrelated to railway activities.
And that the boom lift, is that self-operating? Is it gas powered?
No, I believe it's a diesel-powered piece of equipment that's operated by one individual. And again, that individual departed that vehicle when he sensed the impending impact of the train.
Are we looking at any charges or anything like that? Charges
Say again?
connection?
Well, right now, again, the investigation is ongoing, and we'll advise you if there are any charges.
When you spoke to the operator of the boom lift, did he mention any signals, railway crossings?
Well, I'm not going to get into the details of of what he provided us, but I will say that our investigation at this time, it has determined that, or we believe that the train was certainly sounding its horn and following all railway regulations.
How fast was the train traveling?
I don't know exactly how fast, but I'll give you an estimate, believed to be approximately 30 miles an hour, or within the posted limits for this section of railway.
And for this train to not hit any vehicles traveling along this heavily traveled road,
Sure.
what could you say to that effect? I mean, certainly close to a miracle here.
Definitely, without a doubt, close to a miracle, and we're very thankful. That we didn't have any other, we didn't have any other vehicles or other persons that were injured or struck during this accident.
Were there any other drivers or people out along the roadway that said they had to swerve to avoid getting hit by
Well,
the train?
we are aware that some vehicles did swerve, in the, out of caution. And just one other thing that I'll just mention, we're talking about the hazmat here. I did indicate hazmat spill. The most significant hazmat spill we had was the diesel fuel in the railway, or from the locomotive power units. Initially, while we were actually coming down here and dealing with the situation, we did contact the Coast Guard in the abundance of caution, because we didn't know what type of fuels or what type of chemical spills or issues we had. And due to the fact that we're close to the river, we wanted to make sure in the event we had to address any of those concerns, they'd be ready and available to boom the river. But at this point, there's no indication that we have any issues of any of that fuel leak going into the river or the waterway.
Officials were saying yesterday that there was a small sulfuric acid leak. There was a concern about
And
the creek being contaminated.
Initially, upon initial arrival and assessing the situation, we felt that there might have been a sulfuric acid leak from two of the tankers, but ultimately the Orange County Hazmat and the fire department, they did look further into that, and they determined, just due to the temperature change, it was just condensation from the tank. So as I stated a little while ago, or at the beginning of the interview here, none of the tanks were compromised, and there were no leaks with regard to any of the tanks that were being pulled by the train.
You mentioned that there were some cars that were traveling in the area.
Yes.
That had to swerve. So were they driving and they had to swerve as the train was coming off?
I believe they just swerved, cautiously to make sure that they weren't struck by by what they obviously observed was a locomotive unit derailing and coming into the roadway.
So obviously it was a train, what the train was carrying nearby here. This could have been.
Oh, it could have been much worse than it actually is. Yes. Any other questions?
By tonight, you're expecting maybe this might be cleared, or sometime tonight, tomorrow?
Well, obviously, as you see, the contractors for CSX, they've been at work all night. They're doing a fantastic job out there, and we'd expect the roadway to likely here on River Road to probably be opened sometime tomorrow. And I believe, speculation on my part, that CSX is hoping to have their river line here, opened in the next 24, repaired and opened, hopefully in the next 24 hours. But I can't be exactly sure on that.
How many blocks are closed to traffic here? For a mile stretch?
I don't know if anyone else would have have that information. We have a few roadway closures in the area here, just to allow only recovery equipment in. I believe we have about four traffic checkpoints, but to give you anything more specific at this point, I don't have that. Again, I don't think there's a real heavy. It's going to be a heavy problem or a serious problem for motorists in the area here. It's not a heavily traveled roadway, and we haven't had any issues with traffic congestion.
My last question: the victim who was hospitalized, does he remain in St. Luke's?
I'm not sure at this time if he's been released. Mazzone, M-A-Z-Z-O-N-E. And I'm a captain with the New York State Police.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.